All right, all right, all right. We're back. And it's COMP2007, summer 2016, lesson 1, part 1, and you guys are section B, right? I did section A this morning. What are we doing here this time around? We are doing enterprise computing. You'll notice up on Blackboard, you have your outline, you have your syllabus, you have my contact information if you need to get a hold of me, and you also have the playlist that's going to happen. One thing to note about the playlist is up online. It's from last year, right? Because I did this course with Rich last year in summer, same time frame, right? So the videos that exist there are for last year's course. So there's going to be differences because this year our course is going to be a little bit more schizophrenic, right? Unfortunately. But fortunately for you, we're going to detail a couple of things. The book is an older book, but we're dealing with older technologies. We're talking about, for the first half, right? We're talking about ASP.NET Web Forms for the first half of the course, this part, right? Where you learn how to do ASP.NET Web Forms with the Microsoft environment, Visual Studio 2013, 2015. I recommend Visual Studio 2015 with Update 2, with VS Web Essentials built in. I'll talk about that in a second. Please do not try and use Visual Studio 2012 or something earlier. That would not be well. It will not go well with you. If you're a Mac user, and like I am, you have to virtualize this if you want to take it home. So I recommend Fusion, not Parallels. I think Fusion runs a little bit better, that's my opinion, than Parallels when it comes to stuff like doing things with Microsoft Visual Studio. Everyone's different, and if it works for you, keep doing what you're doing, right? But please install Visual Studio 2015 on your machine if you're going to do that with a Mac or a Linux machine, okay? So we need Visual Studio 2013, 2015. For this course, you're going to need GitHub. So if you had problems running GitHub last semester, and if you're with me with COMP2068, or a couple semesters ago, if you're with me on COMP2068 with Rich, you need to fix that. GitHub is required for this course, okay? The other thing that's required is Visual Studio. So if you had a problem with Visual Studio last semester or 2 semesters ago, you need to fix that problem. It's on you. I'm going to help you do it, but Visual Studio's got to be fixed. And Azure, right? Visual Studio, GitHub, Azure. You need to have those 3 things working, right? For this course, they're all required. They're not optional. Okay? You can't do things with Cloud9. You can't do things with VS Code like we did last semester and the semesters before that. You can't do things with Heroku or some other cloud service. It's got to be with Azure. That's the requirement for this course. All right. So please get all that ready to go. And you get a bit of time to do it. You get a lab one that's up on Blackboard right now, where you have to set up your GitHub account. We did this last time, right? So you get like 2-3% again. But here's the thing, right? You need to set up with GitHub. You need to set up on Azure, and you need to push the little app that we're going to build today together, okay? With Visual Studio 2013, 2015, and Microsoft.NET Framework Web Forms, right? 4.5.1. Okay, that's what we're really doing in the first half. The first half is this old technology that's got about 80% penetration on the market for Microsoft. That's why we're doing it. If we didn't have a lot of penetration like this, then we'd probably do MVC, which is what we're going to be doing in the second half. Now, this is kind of weird. That's why I say it's a schizophrenic course. You've already done COMP2068. Who hasn't done that? I know everyone's been attended COMP2068 anyway. Right? That's the Node one. You did everyone did that one, pretty much that's in here, right? Well, what's really going to happen in the future is we're going to move this course before that one, right, in terms of flow, right? So that one is harder, actually, than this one, right? COMP2068 with the mean stack, always is mean to everybody, right? It's a hard thing to learn using a lot of tools. And in fact, anything, the web technology stack, any web technology stack you use, in my opinion, is probably the hardest stack to learn these days. Why? Because it changes every month. Right, everything happens. We just upgraded to Node 6.1, right? That's where we're at right now. And only 3 months ago or 2 months ago, we were at Node 5.9 or 5.8. So it's constantly moving forward, the Node stack, and all that stuff, right? And we also have other technologies, other ancillary technologies that are also moving forward, chopping along with the modern web developer in this Web 3.0 or whatever you want to call it now, right? So that's why, web development's hard. And of course, what we're doing here is this first half is this older stuff, by the way, that's installed in most, if government installation uses ASP.NET Web Forms, that's who uses it. Some banks use it as well, but they don't use MVC. Okay, that's what they don't use. A lot of them don't use MVC. It's the newer framework. MVC 5 is out right now. They're going to start calling it .NET Core. And .NET Core, this is going to be happy for people that are using Cloud9 and all this kind of stuff. It's going to be available cross-platform pretty soon. It is already available if you look at .NET Core. If you want to install it on your Mac, totally fine. You can totally do it. It's good with MVC. We're not going to do it in this course because it's a hell of an installation process, right? I'll tell you, it's probably about as hard as we did the bean stack to get it all functioning properly, right? But it is available out there if you're someone who wants to keep open source, new and open source and moving forward, right? But for us, we don't care about that stuff. We're Visual Studio 2013, 2015, which is nice and easy. You're going to see how easy it is today to put all that stuff together. We're covering chapters 1 and 2. This is the old book. This is another book. There's 2 books for this course. They're both recommended but not required. Okay, so if you look at the optional books here, one of them is this Murax ASP.NET 4.5 Web Programming with Visual Studio 2012. Don't worry about that because I'm going to make new PowerPoint presentations that are 2015, right? So I'll update that for you. And this other one, this Rocks book that details professional ASP.NET MVC 5. There's a newer one, beginning ASP.NET with MVC 5. I don't recommend that one yet. It's a little bit more complex to use this one. This one follows the flow that I want to use, and that's why I'm doing it. Even though it's 2014, I will update you with some newer stuff, newer standards. It's really hot in here. For 2015, right? And 2016. So that's really it in a nutshell from a material perspective. My information is up online, but this is it. You can certainly send me an email. I do respond way better to text though. So if you text me, this is my phone number. Indicate who you are, what you need, and if I have time to talk, and I can certainly call you back. All right. If I'm not available, I'll say can't talk right now. I'm in class, or if I don't answer you, it means I'm in class, and that kind of thing. That's the only reason why I won't do it. But I'll try and get back to you later on. This doesn't leave my phone, right? I have my phone on me all the time. And by the way, today is a special day because today is the first Apple Pay transaction that I did, right? Because Apple Pay came to Canada on Tuesday officially, right? Across all banks. So I did my first transaction. It was 2 seconds. Bing, done. So that was really cool. Let me talk about this course in terms of what's required. So there's going to be a couple of assignments, only a couple of assignments worth 5%. Those are going to be individual assignments. They're both key to first half and second half. So assignment 1 will really be for the first half of the course, just to get your feet wet on what ASP.NET Web Forms is all about, right? And that'll be due like week 4. I'll give that to you next week. Right? A very simple assignment to get done. It'll be something you've seen before. Nothing, no surprises. In fact, there's not going to be a lot of surprises in this course because a lot of the stuff you know already. You know Bootstrap by now. Who does not know Bootstrap? I'd be very surprised to strangle someone. If you say, I don't know Bootstrap, I'll put them in a headlock, right? We did Bootstrap for like a couple of semesters, right? So we're going to use Bootstrap. We're going to be using Font Awesome. We're going to be using all the tools that we used last semester and a couple semesters before when I had the other team. So there's nothing new from that perspective, from styling, from a technology-based perspective. It's just adopting the new tool sets with Visual Studio 2013, 2015, Azure, and GitHub. Okay, those are the things that we're going to be doing. Project 1, you're going to be building a small app with some validation and everything else. That's going to be due by the end of midterm, right? So by the time your midterm is ready, and there's going to be 3 parts to it, just like we've done before. We've broken it down to 3 parts. That's going to be with you and a partner, potentially maybe one more. I can't give all the Patels, unfortunately. You can't all work together on this one, right? But at least you and you and another person, maybe one more. I'll see how it goes. We'll work together to produce something. So 1 individual's assignment, 1 partnered or pair programming app that you're going to produce by midterm. So you'll come up with something, and they'll be published on Azure, right? So it's going to be nice and new. Second half is very similar. Assignment 2, get your feet wet on VC. What are controllers? What are views? What are models? How do I do security? And then pump it out by week 11. And then you're going to get Project 2 with the same thing, and you're going to be building with Project 2 an e-commerce site of your choice. We're going to talk about e-commerce and how you're going to build out an e-commerce site. You and a partner, maybe 2, right? Again, not all the Patels can work together, right? Although I love you all. You guys are all great guys, but and girls, but can't happen. And then by the end, part 3 is going to be done by the end, right? So the way it breaks out into marks-wise is assignment 1 and 2 are 5% each, small little assignments, right? Project 1 and 2 are bigger. They're 20% each. They're actually worth more than an exam, okay? So it's kind of more serious. The first part 1 of Project 1 will be worth 5. Part 2 of Project 1 will be worth probably 5. And the last part will be worth 10. right? Your final version of the project, right? So 5, 5, 10, so that's 20%. And both of them are keyed like that. So project 1 and project 2 were 20%. And then you've got your midterms and your final exam with 15. There's going to be 5% probably allocated to a written and 10% of a practical, I'm hoping. See how the class goes. It's going to be based on your aptitude and how you can absorb this stuff. If it's really too hard, I'll just make it multiple choice. I know people hate that, but that's how it's going to be, right? And then what we have is lecture, so labs and quizzes. I'm going to make 5 labs and 5 quizzes, 3 in the first half and 2 in the second half, where you're going to have 2% each, which are going to total about 20%. That's the plan. Okay, so it's going to be organized. There's going to be lots of stuff happening. And remember what we're going to do, because learnings from last semester and the semester before, we're going to do lab one day, quiz the next day. Lab one day, quiz the next day. So every week we're going to produce something, right? But not every week we're going to have a quiz. It was too intense for some people. I got some feedback that said, I can't, I'm going crazy and I did bad, right? Even some of the smartest people did bad, right? So it's not like they couldn't do it, it was just too much. And there's a lot of other stuff. I'm not your only course, right? And I understand that. That's why I'm kind of breaking it out that way. So if you look at the schedule, you can see that lab 1 is today. This lab 1 will be due next week, only because of my administrative challenges in Blackboard for section 3, or section C. Section C I'm doing between 5 and 8 p.m. tonight. Not on Blackboard yet, just by chance. And also not on Banner, right? So between those two things, I don't have access, so therefore I have to give a break. I have to give a chance for section C to get in there, me to put my stuff up there, for them to submit things. It has to be fair for everybody, so therefore it's due next week on Thursday for this one only. But typically labs, what I want to do is I mark them in week. I want to kind of, so you supply the, I give you the lab, you do it, and it's done, and then it's marked. That's what I want to get to. That's the pace that I want to kind of adopt. Quizzes are going to be self-marked. Again, there'll be 5 to, you're laughing, 5 to 10, I swear I'm going to mark this time, I swear. 5 to 10 questions, right? It's going to happen, right? And it's going to be from a pool of questions. There might be 20 questions because there's 3 sections. I can't give you the same questions, right? And 5 questions or 6 questions from a pool of 20, let's say, right? That you're going to get. It's going to be randomly distributed to all of you. And then it'll be worth 2% of your final mark. But that's what quizzes will run. And that's really it in a nutshell. If you notice, midterms are this week for this year, I should say, the midterm break runs between just before Canada Day, right? So the last week of June is the midterm break. So we won't have classes during that time. And the Canada Day falls on the Friday, I believe. So that's good. That means we won't miss a class. There's no class. We're Thursday anyway. But we're going to have a really good semester. I'm looking forward to it from a scheduling perspective. Anyone have any questions before we continue? So this is kind of our plan. Questions? Okay. One thing to note also is that, like I said, even though I have section 1, 2, 3, again, they're all on the Thursday. So today, I will allow you to sit in any class, like I said. So let's say, for example, sorry, Lucy, I'm using. So let's say Lucy, she doesn't want to be in this class because I don't know, she doesn't like it's too hot in the afternoon, and she wants to be here in the morning at 9 o'clock, right? She can certainly attend the 9 to 12 class, right? On the lab day. On lab day, you can come in, but on quiz day, for now, until I fix the administrative problems, right? You'd have to be coming in during this time, okay? So you can sit anytime. If you want to stay, if you want to come to every lecture, if you can find room, all the power to you. Come in, right? I don't mind. Stand up if you want to watch it. I'm okay. And people have done that before in the past. They've come into multiple lectures because they want to see it again, or they want to have a chance to, to try and practice live if you have, kind of some kind of spare time or whatever in your schedule. Okay, so I'm flexible with that kind of stuff. It's the exact same thing. The other thing is that what if I'm giving the same assignments, right? So to section 1, 2, 3, somebody from another section, I'll allow that, right? Because again, it's the same assignment, right? So I don't care who you're working with. I'll just give half to you and half to them, whatever it is, right? So don't worry about where you sit in section 1, 2, 3. If you want to work with somebody in another section, as long as both of you let me know who you're working with, and you'll both, I'll give both of you the marks, no problem. For the most part, I have to say that last semester was a bit of a cluster in terms of the way things went, but it was a good experience. The COMP2007 folks did fairly well, I have to say. Did really, really well. A couple semesters ago, we did COMP2007 again. That's Advanced Web Programming with Rich. We kind of balanced it off. Rich did one half, I did the other half, while he was switching semesters. that went really well as well. But one thing that we noticed, and I'm going to kind of give feedback to you guys as well, is it was really hard for 2 semesters ago because you're just learning JavaScript. You're getting all this new technology. Some of you didn't have any of this stuff as well. 2 professors, I think, maybe even a challenge as well for the first time. I think there was a challenge there. I think last semester ran a little smoother. I'll be honest, the ones that the people that had me last semester from beginning to end. And that's how it's going to go. The only thing we're going to do with this class, like I said, is move it earlier so that way you have it, this one here, you'll have it first, so you get this whole gist of MVC before you get into the main stack. So that's really the plan in a nutshell. Remember that I am going to be holding our classes broadcasting live like I'm doing right now on YouTube. You can find the link for that. I'm going to be using GitHub, so please, if you don't have it, sign up for GitHub, right? And I'm going to be using Azure, so please sign up for Azure if you don't have Azure. Is there anyone that doesn't have Azure or GitHub working? All right, so let's talk about that. So if you don't have Azure or GitHub or both working, you need to sign up for a GitHub account, and you need to sign up for an Azure account. And the way to sign up for an Azure account is go to dreamspark.com/student/software-catalog and sign up for your free Azure account. All right, this one doesn't expire. That's the good thing. You click on Microsoft Azure. You go through the process and you sign in. You have to sign in with a Microsoft account, and once you've done that, you have access to Azure. Again, for this course, there is no option for Heroku or DigitalOcean or something else. That's not an option for this course. It was an option for COMP2008 because we were doing open source technologies. Here, it's all Microsoft, so I'm asking you to use Microsoft Azure. Okay? Everything you do when you do an assignment is going to be, there's going to be 2 components, the GitHub and your cloud computing component. So there's always going to be that. That's going to be worth 8 marks out of every assignment, right? So please, if you don't have that working, please get it working. Okay, that's required. Okay, so let's say you get your GitHub account, you get your Microsoft Azure account working. It's going to go like this. You're going to go to portal.azure.com. For some of you, it's going to be a review. Please bear with me as I review. For some of you, you haven't seen it in a couple semesters. This is new. You're going to go here, and if you notice, I've already got a COMP2007 S2016 Lesson 1A. Is that you? No. You guys are B. So anything that says B on the end for this particular time frame is for you, for your class. Even on GitHub, when I put up another repo, it's going to be COMP2007 Summer 2016 Lesson 1B, right? And Lesson 1C will be for the night class. So everyone will have the same thing, but I'll do it in slightly different ways, right? Actually, it'll be almost exactly the same. I just want to give everyone a shot to see it the same way, right? I'm going to try and record my lectures during this time frame because I've already done them in the morning, a nice warm-up, and then in the afternoon, I should be a little better. In the evening, I'll probably be too tired, so I figured this is probably the best time frame, right? So that's how it's going to run. So, okay, Microsoft Azure. We're going to do, lab 1 is really doing what we did last time. Deploy to GitHub, this little example set we're going to make today, right? And after we deploy to GitHub, what you're going to do is you're going to auto-deploy from GitHub into Azure, just like we've done before. I'm going to show you all those steps as before. I'm going to be using a virtualized version of Windows. So here's Visual Studio 2015. My version is 2015. It's very similar to 2013. I find it a little bit superior to 2013 at this point. It took a little bit of time to bake. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to go to 2015 for a while because 2015 had really cool features, and there was really nothing to push me to 2015 until recently. Recently, we have versions of 2015 with Update 2, which I recommend you get. And the way you can get that, of course, as you can get it through DreamSpark, but I would recommend going to this site right here, e5onthehub.com. And what you want to do is you want to download Visual Studio 2015, right, for yourself, whether you're virtualizing or whether you're doing it native, it's okay. There's 3 different versions here: Community, Enterprise, and the regular one, right? You can choose any one of these with Update 2. Please don't choose Update 1. That's silly. Why would you choose Update 1? Then you have to patch Update 2 on top of that. This comes already patched, right? That's number 1. Second thing I recommend for Visual Studio is VS Web Essentials, right? It's a really cool tool to use with Visual Studio. I highly recommend it because it gives you things like, remember we did Emmet in COMP2007, we did this shorthand for doing HTML, right? Where I would type, and I wouldn't type the whole HTML stuff in, and it would just give me the solution, right? Well, same thing here with VS Web Essentials. You get something called Zen coding, which is very similar to Emmet from a HTML5 shorthand. I can type in like HTML, greater than, and so on, and I can do that whole thing. I'm going to show that to you today. So VS Web Essentials for Visual Studio is super important. I recommend it if you're going to do this with me. For 2013, 2015, it even goes back to 2010 if you really want to do that. Please don't use 2010 or 2012, that version of Visual Studio here in this course. You'll have problems. Okay, we don't want to do that. Okay, so other tools to download. Also, there are some, here's Visual Studio 2015, I'm going to show you. Under Tools, I want to go to Extensions and Updates. I want to show you what extensions and updates I currently have, right? Now, this is something that you can install for Visual Studio 2013 or 2015, the Bootstrap Snippet Pack. I highly recommend, right? We're going to be using Bootstrap. Why not use the Bootstrap Snippet Pack? It helps you write Bootstrap stuff a lot faster, saves you time, right? These are all the ones I have. EF to Angular, you know, if you want to take something that's written for Entity Framework and you want to convert it to an Angular app, you can do that. It's a neat little thing. Lately, I've been exploring Xamarin Studio and Xamarin for if you want to make cross-platform mobile apps with Visual Studio. It's the way to go. It's not required for this course, but I highly recommend the download. It's going to eat up your space, though, so be aware. It's like 30 gigs, right? Yeah, it's big. You know, with Visual Studio with Xamarin Studio, with the Xamarin plugin for Visual Studio 2015, it's big. It's like 30 gigs. GitHub extension for Visual Studio, really important. Please get this one. It actually is a third-party extension that allows you to connect to Visual Studio and create GitHub repos right from Visual Studio, so you don't need an command line at all, right? Which is totally cool, right? So please grab this one. If you're if you do hybrid apps with Ionic, you know then about Angular and Angular 2 with the mean stack, you can build cross-platform mobile apps with Ionic, the Ionic framework. Kind of cool, not for this course, but if you want to, you can grab that. And there's nothing really else that I want to mention here. The Nuget package manager for Visual Studio 2015, that's kind of required for this course. Nuget, what's the package manager that we use for the mean stack? We use a couple package managers for the mean stack, yes. And what else? What other package manager? Bower. Those are the two package managers. One for front end, the Bower stuff, and NPM for the back end Node stuff, right? And there's others out there right now. There's some really cool ones coming out. Other package managers that are really, really cool. Nuget is the package manager for Visual Studio, right? So think about Nuget. We need Nuget package manager for Visual Studio 2015 or 2013, so that way it can do our package manager for us. It's auto install with Visual Studio, so please make sure you include this in your install, okay? There's others, but nothing really that crazy. If you're a React person, the React snippet pack is really cool. For front-end frameworks, again, React is one of the most popular frameworks out there, rivaling Angular. Okay, that's stuff to install. One thing to note is, what kind of projects are there? Well, if I go File, let's do this together. So I go File, New, and this is Visual Studio 2015 project, right? I have some options. Now, depending on the way you install Visual Studio 2015, you can have an option to install with VB first, or C# first, or Visual C++, or whatever you want as your first language. My first language is Visual C#. That's the way I default. And I want to click under Visual C#. I want to click on Web, right? And I want to choose ASP.NET Web Application, template that I'm using. Underneath that, notice that on the right here in the form, let's bring this up a little bit so you guys can see. On the right, notice that there's create a directory or for solution. I want to have that checked. And then down here, this might be different for some of you. It might say add solution to source control or something like that if you haven't done it already. I recommend you do that. Make sure you have this thing clicked. Create new Git repository is what it says for me, because when I chose add solution to source control for the first time, it brings you another dialog box that comes up, right? And it says, which one do you want? Team Foundation Server or Git? Which one do you want for your solution? And there's another checkbox there that's going to come up that I can't show you right now that says, hey, do you want to make this the default source control? And you want to make Git the default source control so it never asks you any other question other than this one. Create new Git repository. Okay. So those two things I want you to do. Let's change our web application. We're going to make our stub right now. We're going to make this COMP2007, and it's going to be summer 2016, right? Lesson 1, B, right? Because you guys are the B class, right? Not because you guys are B in terms of my estimation. I love you guys, right? But because you're the B section, okay? So you do that, and let's press OK. When you press OK, you're going to come to this screen here. It's going to say, select a template. Now, I'm using Visual Studio 2015, so my templates, there's two. There's the ASP.NET 4.5 templates, and there's the ASP.NET 5, which is also going to be called ASP.NET Core, right, in the next iteration. The core templates are here. Please don't use these ones for the first half of the course. Please use this one for today. You can also use this one in future iterations, but notice that it comes with a hell of a lot more code. Think of this as a scaffold. Remember we did Express, and we used the Express generator in COMP2068 to generate a scaffold? That's what this one is. It's a web form scaffold that gives you a bunch of folders, functionality. It even gives you authentication. Take a look. You have some choices for authentication here. No authentication, individual user accounts, and so on. You don't want to choose this right now. You just want to choose this, right? And you can also add them down here. Something else that we're going to talk about later on is unit tests in this course. We're going to do a little bit of test-driven development, right? But not in the first half of the course. The first half of the course is old school web forms. The second half really works nicely with MVC5, right? So tests with MVC5, they work nice. Web forms, it's a little trickier. So we won't do this add unit test right now, but you will see me doing it in the next half, right? So look for that as we get to the second half. Do I want to host in the cloud? Some of you may have this option if you're using Visual Studio 2015. If you host in the cloud, if you click this button, what it'll actually do is create your Microsoft container, web container right away, right? Please don't do that right now. Let's start like this. Start with empty, right? Start with this not being checked if you have this option. And let's click OK. This is going to go out. Microsoft Visual Studio is going to do its dance. It's going to create the folder structure that I want. It's going to take its sweet time because I'm virtualizing. Notice that I have a bunch of free space here. Yours may not look like this. Yours may look like this, right? And that's okay. I've just unpinned mine. You can pin and unpin your sidebars. Here's another one. Let's pin this one. It might look like this, right? I can pin and unpin my sidebars by clicking this pin right here, right? So we're just going to unpin them. I want to give more space to you guys so you can see this. This is important, okay? Notice this Visual Studio 2015 application. It has, like every Microsoft application, the menu at the top. For those people who are familiar, now you guys have done RAD, Rapid Application Development. I think it's COMP2004, right? With Andrew, I'm thinking, or someone else. You may have not had Andrew. You might have had somebody else. Anyways, so at the end of the day, what it is very similar to that, except we're building web forms, not Microsoft Windows forms, right? But the technology is very similar. So if you remember Windows forms, right, then web forms will be like, you know, wow, this is so much the same. It's so easy, and that's what it is. It is easy. It's way easier than MeanStat. Okay. Let's take a look. So here's my Solution Explorer. I'm going to pin this up here, and I also have some other windows that you're going to need here as well. I want you to make sure you have Team Explorer in here. Team Explorer. And if you don't have Team Explorer as a tab in here, right, you can get it from View, right? Team Explorer. Right? There's all your windows right here. View, Team Explorer. Also, I have this Properties tab here, right? I'm going to kind of staple this on. Properties, normally I wouldn't have my Properties window here. I wouldn't use it if I was making a very simple web application. I don't need it. But for web forms, you definitely need this Properties window, and you can get it again from View, Properties if you don't have it. The one thing that's really good about Visual Studio is you can move everything around to customize your workspace the way you like, right? So I've organized myself like this, but you can certainly organize your workspace however way you like. When we're doing unit tests, right, I also have a Test Explorer. We're not going to do unit tests right now in the first half, but in the second half we will. And to get this window, you need to go to Test, Windows, Test Explorer, right? So that's important to do too. if we're going to do unit testing. Also, there's another one. There's also Server Explorer, where I can see how am I connected to Azure, right? You can see that right now I'm just not authenticated properly, but I will. And there's also other servers that I can connect to as well, like for example my virtual machine. And underneath that, I can also connect to things like data, other databases and so on in here. So Server Explorer is another window we'll probably need, right? So I was going to just X out of that. Oops. And if I've lost it, let me get it back. How do I get it? I want to search for Server Explorer. Here it is. Server Explorer. Right? And we can pin or unpin this as we like. Right? So your workspace is customizable. And I recommend that you customize it so it's comfortable for you. Okay? Now remember, we're talking about before. Yep. Does it say add to source control? Click that. You have to go, remember I said, if you haven't done it before, you click add to source control in the beginning when you make your first project, and then it'll take you to another screen that says, what source do you want? And then you choose Git, and then you choose make that my primary source. There's a little other checkbox in there to make that default. Go there. Try it again. Okay, so you've got your website here, but here's two things. You can make a website or a web project. In this course, we only make web projects. We don't make websites, right? We make web applications, okay? So just make sure there's some other options and some other versions of Visual Studio 2015 that gives you, that says file, new website. No, please don't do this. Right? This is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a new project, right? That's what you want. Okay, here's another thing. I've got a project here, right? And I mean, I got a couple things here to look at. Some stuff that gets populated from Visual Studio from the get-go that I didn't do anything with. Right? I didn't make these. These kind of were made for me. Here's one. Packages.config. What could that be? This is very similar to a packages.json file. If you remember from back in the mean stack, we had a packages.json file. This, instead of using JSON, it uses XML. Microsoft, and it basically lists 2 packages that have been included in our project, right? We don't touch this file. Please don't touch it, right? So you just get in trouble, right? And then you'll say, Tom, my project doesn't work. This is the reason why it doesn't work. Please don't touch that package. And don't delete anything in Solution Explorer. If you sit there and go, hey, can I delete all this? Yeah, you can, but it would break your project, right? It wouldn't work for Microsoft. So please don't do that. Here's another one. We also have a properties folder with assembly info. Properties and assembly info is another, it's a C# file in this case, and what it does, it talks about the project assembly. This is almost like your manifest, if you will, right? If you did Android, any kind of Android builds before, or if you did iOS development, this would be like your plist, right? So if you look there to find that in other than C#, you can go to project, properties on the bottom with the little wrenches, right? And you can look at your project in a more visual format where you can say, well, I'm targeting .NET Framework 4.5. You can also change your framework to the newer frameworks. We'll do that later on in the course. Right now, 4.5 or 4.51 is just fine. The newer frameworks give additional functionality, all right? We don't need to do that right now. Okay, leave it as is. And you can other specify, we're going to kind of go in here again, not today, but we're going to go through it. But your project properties gives you additional details that you can specify for your project. Okay, and then you also have something called references. Well, these are all the references that have been installed in your project. These are all library references, so you can access the C# library, as well as other libraries that make your project work, right? Finally, you have something called web config. Now, from a regular website perspective, you don't need it. If I was going to make a regular website, I don't need this stuff, right? But this is really key if you're going to make something with Microsoft, especially if you're putting things on Azure. You need a web.config, and web forms needs web config. It's a requirement. So please don't delete this one. We're going to go into how to use this again and use additional. We can add additional configurations in here to add to our manifest. Okay, so those things don't touch, is what I'm saying. I just wanted to explain what they were, so you're like, you didn't tell us what they were, but we can't touch them, right? I don't want that to happen. Please, and that, by the way, that's my voice. That I'm not targeting a girl or anything like that. It's just me, right? So anyways, let us go through it. So if we right-click here on my project, let's make a flat, non-dynamic, a static HTML file. How do I do that here in Visual Studio? I'm going to right-click on the project. Here's the project. And I'm going to add, here, a new HTML page. Now, if it's not here, if HTML doesn't show up, it should. But if it doesn't, you can always go to New Item. Let me do that again. So I'm right-clicking on my project. There's two pieces. There's the project, and there's the solution. The solution is the container that contains your project, right? Your project is the thing that is what we're writing right now. You can have multiple projects. For example, you can have a project for your web. You can have a project for your database. You can have a project for your test, right? Multiple projects in the same solution container, right? All we have is one project right now. We're going to right-click onto it. We're going to go Add, and we can either go here, HTML page, or New Item, and we can choose under New Item, HTML page. We're going to make our HTML page index.html. Let's do that. And when you do that, it populates this, right? Here's our HTML page. And, you know, if you want to test this out, I want to put an H1 tag, you know, and I want to say hello world. Let's do it. There it is. I'm going to save it. And here's something. There's two ways I can run this thing. Before, when we were doing MeanStack, we'd have to have a separate, you know, NodeMon or something else, HTTP-server, something to run, you know, the MeanStack, so we can see the pages. Here, we're going to run IIS in the background, Internet Information Services, in the background. And what it does is we can choose which browser we want to use. I'm choosing Chrome because we're used to Chrome, but you can certainly choose any of the other browsers or options you want, right? This is where it's going to display your test, your web page, right? Now, there's two ways to do that. I can click here and start it, or I can go to Debug, right? Start debugging, or start debugging without start without debugging. If you start without debugging, it's a little faster. Watch. If I go Control F5, I can start without debugging. And what it does, it starts Internet Information Services on the back end and displays my website. Okay? So it's a little server that runs right now on port 52420 that runs my index.html page. It's all built into Visual Studio. Nothing for you to do. Nothing for you to download. All right? Okay, cool. If I right-click, and if I look at Inspect, and if I look at Console, just like we did last time, I see this little error that comes from Microsoft that says, hey, I'm looking for a favicon, but you don't have one. If you refresh, that error goes away. And if I look at the elements of the page, they're exactly what we would have expected to see, except for Feedly, because I have this little Feedly app that I've included in Chrome, which I will get rid of, right? But basically, it's a standard page. Okay, very easy. And this is a static page. You can do static pages with your web form as well. You can mix static pages with dynamic pages. Oh, God, I hate that word dynamic because it doesn't really make any sense. Because every page can be dynamic now with JavaScript, right? But before, it meant it was back-end connected. There was a back-end, you know, server, something going on the back end, right? It doesn't mean that anymore. So that's one thing. You can make static pages like this with Visual Studio. You don't have to make it so that it's a web form. Notice that we have a doc type. We have, you know, HTML. We can add in, you know, what kind of language is English. Here's some stuff that we can do, right? See how it picks up a lot of stuff automatically. We can make this the title, which is, you know, my home page, whatever. We can do all those kind of things to our page very simply, and it's 2 seconds to create, right? Static page. I want to add some stuff you're used to seeing, right? Here's stuff. We added a couple of folders, right? We added a content folder, an assets folder, and a scripts folder. Let's add those in. Let's do that. How do I add folders? Right-click, add new folder, right? And I can do content, like we did before, right? Right-click, add new folder, scripts. Right-click, add new folder, right? And we have assets for everything else we have. Hey, look, it's exactly the same as I was talking with you about, you know, last semester and 2 semesters ago, right? Which is, this is the form I want you to use. This is our standard stuff. And I'll tell you right now, this isn't me. This is Microsoft. Microsoft likes to use the content folder and the scripts folder. And that's why I've asked you to do it from last time, because I knew you were coming to this class at some point. It was all a big plan, I swear. Okay, this is cool. this is nice, but this is boring. We've done lots of sample pages this way, and this doesn't really tell us any kind of story about what we're doing here, right? What I want to do is I want to kill this page, all right? We're not going to make static pages here in with web forms. Let's get rid of the index.html. Get rid of it. No more index.html. Here's something to note. You can't make pages that say tom.html and expect tom.html to show up on the server somewhere. It's got to have one of 4 or 5 different names. Index.html, index.htm, default.html, default.htm, default.aspx, index.aspx. Those are the ones that that are configured for most servers, especially on Azure, right? If you make some other malarkey name, whatever name you want, it's not going to work, right? Not as your first page. You have to specify, unless, I'll say this unless, you otherwise specify on your server, okay? I'm going to put it like that. It's not impossible. You can make another page the main page, your start page, but you have to specify that that's so, all right? Okay, cool. So regular pages. Let's add a web form for the first time so we can see what a web form looks like, okay? I'm going to right-click here on my project again, and I'm going to add web form. Now, if it's not here, again, I would recommend you go to New Item. Here's New Item. Okay, cool. Here's New Item. Notice that I have a lot of different options here. You may not have some of these options. All you care about is web form, right? There's also web form with master page, which we'll be handling later. Don't choose this one. This will add additional pages for you. Actually, this is the way we do templating and partial pages. We use a master page. We'll talk about that later. But for now, we're going to do web forms. So let's just rename this as default. Oops, not something else. Default. There we go. Default, and then click add. Notice I didn't put the ASPX, just default's enough. Okay, cool. I've got my default page, and it almost looks like my static page with a couple of changes. Let's talk about these changes, right? I got my doc type. I got this. And we don't want this. Get rid of this, right? This shouldn't be here. This should be lang is equal to English. That's all we need here. All right, cool. We have a couple other things here. We have something at the top here. On line 1, I'm just going to unpin this for a second. We have something called a directive. This is an ASP.NET directive. And what it is it tells us a couple of things. There's a couple of attributes here. There's 4 little attributes that it includes. So notice that we're using the less than %sign. This almost looks like, you know, EJS in some ways, or PHP. In fact, this came from classic ASP, active server pages, right back in the day, where active server pages were like Microsoft's answer to PHP, right? So we used like less than % and then greater than to kind of specify a directive with other markings here, like the @ sign or the equal sign or whatever it is, to give you other functionality, right? Here we're talking about this page, and this page uses a language. This is the first attribute, which specifies C# as my backend language, okay? So with web forms, we don't use JavaScript as the backend language. We can actually use JavaScript for additional functionality, validation, all kinds of special effects. But for logic, we're going to be using C#. When we connect to the database, it's going to be C#. When we do any kind of postbacks, C#. Everything is C#. So if you're a C# person, which by the way is one of the easiest and best languages out there, not the money language. The money language is Java. C# is like still in the top 10, but not number 1. Java is number 1. And JavaScript being the most popular language in the world right now, right? If you look up on GitHub, it's got the most hits. And why? Because JavaScript is on the front end and the back end, and it's on the rise, right? C#, it's got competition, right? But it's really good language. It's awesome. We can make games with C#, with Unity. We can do a bunch of stuff with C#. Okay, here's the first one. So language, first attribute. Second one is auto event wire up. I'm going to, by the way, hint, hint, I'm going to ask you about this on a quiz, potentially in the future. It might be a question on a quiz in the base. Auto event wire up says when I can double click a web control and it'll create the backend event handler for me. That's what auto event wire up does. Okay. Code behind talks about the file that I'm going to use on the server side that relates to this web page, right? And it's going to take the form of the same name as my web page. Default.aspx is what I called it. plus the .cs specifier, the extension on the end that says it's the C# code for this page, right? And it's called the code behind file, right? So that's the third attribute. And the fourth one is inherits. It says, hey, this page inherits from this class, the default class that belongs to this namespace. Okay, that's what it does. So here's the namespace, the class. This page inherits from this default class. Now it's called default. It's not a default class that exists somewhere else. We called it default. You could have called it anything you wanted here, right? But by chance, this one here is called default. So that's what this thing does. This first thing is called a directive, again, and with 4 attributes. And they have different functions, these 4 attributes. Here's something else you're going to notice. What the hell is this? Run at, right? Run at is another attribute that only works with ASP.NET Web Forms controls, right? And what run at says is, hey, make sure that you process this particular element on the server side. That's what it means. So both the head and this form element, which includes all this stuff, are processed on the server, right? It's critical to have the run at attribute on web controls, on server controls that we include in our application. If you don't include the run at attribute, it will not run or be processed by the server. And that means that we can use static HTML elements that are not touched on the server, that only updated on the client, and we can also mix it with HTML elements that are processed on the server, right? That's what those things mean. So those are the changes so far. That's what this means. Okay, we're going to take a break in about 15, just to let you guys know. So I know some people need some more coffee. I'm pretty good, you know, in terms of I got my coffee after lunch, but also gives you guys a break, a little bit of a bio break, talk to your girlfriend, and all that stuff, right? Boyfriend, whatever, and you know, and then come back. So I'm just telling you what we're going to be doing from a break perspective. But so this is the differences here going back. These are the differences for this form. Now let's make an H1 tag. Let's add an H1 tag in here, just like before, right? And I'm going to put in an H1 tag that says, you know, hello world, just like we did before. And let's save this. And if you notice, if I run this, again, I have 2 options. I can run it here, right? Or I can go to, under debug, I have 2 other options. One of them is start debugging F5 or start without debugging, control F5. Let's start with debugging for a second. Click onto this. It's going to go through its process, and it's going to generate my website just like before, right? Except there's going to be some differences. You can't see them. From a user experience perspective, you can't really see it. From a source code perspective, if I right-click and go view source, right, it looks different. Here's something, this. I didn't put that in there. And I definitely didn't put this in there. And I definitely didn't put any of this stuff in here. This all got generated by Visual Studio. So web forms, right, when you attach them to a backend server, they render or emit different HTML than a standard static page, right? The HTML, I say it's emitted, right, because it gets created from the backend, right? So what happens is I do some front-end markup. I connect to the back end, those 2 things smash together, and they render a new page, right? So just to let you guys know, this is not standard web stuff. Like you're going to get additional information here in the back end that you didn't expect, right? Just FYI. So don't think it's the regular stuff. It looks the same, not the same. Okay. So that's one thing to note. The other thing to note is if I look at my Solution Explorer here, there's some differences as well. I've got my default ASPX, but if I open up this little container, you can see that I've got my default.aspx.cs file. If I double click on this, you can see that it's actually a C# file. This is the control file, right, that runs for that. That have an ID for them on the default.aspx page, you can access here in your CS file. Your code behind file is what it's called. Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean that we have an option to put some ASP.NET controls in here. How do I know what the ASP.NET controls is? Let's make a label for the first time. So we're going to do one of these. We're going to say ASP is how you start off the control, colon, capital L for label, right? Have. Now, if you can't do it, it might be because you don't have Visual Studio Web Essentials installed, and you're not running Visual Studio 2015. If you can't do what I just did, but you can always type it by hand. It's the same. What we also need in here is an ID with a capital I and capital D. That's different than the lowercase I and lowercase d we see on web applications, right? ID means this is the ID for this web control that's going to be recognized by the back-end code behind file, okay? So if I go through here and I say, well, this form, this little label, I'm going to make it the hello label. Let's say hello label, right? And my text right now is just text. That's all it is. There's nothing in there. It's just going to say text. And it says run at, here's the run at again, server. Every web control, every server control that I put in with ASP.NET has to have this run at server included. If it doesn't, it will not function properly. Okay. Well, that's kind of long, right? It's really long. I just typed that in from memory. Well, kind of. But there's faster ways to do that. What about, I want to do the label, I want to type a damn thing because I'm lazy, right? Well, I can go to my toolbox on the left, and if you don't have your toolbox, by the way, you can always go to View, and under View, you should see Toolbox somewhere. Here it is. And you can add your toolbox into your view, right? So here's my toolbox. Now here I have some standard controls. Here's some standard controls. Take a look at all these. This should be familiar to you. If you've done rapid application development, this is like Windows forms. Okay, going back to that. I can drag and drop a control from here into here, like the label control. I can drag this label right into my code like this. And bam, there it is, right? With an ID and everything. That's a little faster than typing it, right? And I can always change the name of the label from ID label 1 to hello label, right? Here's something else. Because I'm doing this, I want to have access to my properties on the right-hand side. So I'm going to bring in my properties bar in a second when my Visual Studio catches up to my request. And when it does, I'm going to pin it here, and it's going to go down here. And notice that I have access to my properties here that are for this particular control right here, just like you would if you're doing Windows forms, right? But here's what I don't want you to do. Please don't specify background color. And please don't specify border style and style your stuff as much as possible. Why? I want to do this with CSS, right? Yes, it exists, and in the past, we didn't have great use of CSS. Remember, this is old technology, right? You can do it, doesn't mean you should do it, right? Like I said before, just because you have a gun doesn't mean you have to shoot your brother, right? I don't know where I got that from, but I'm saying, right? Not that I don't have a gun. I don't have a gun. I don't have any of that kind of stuff. But you know what I'm saying? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. I want to keep saying that to you guys. So you remember, and even if it's a bad memory, you're like, my God, he used that same ugly analogy over and over again. Yes, I do. So this is here. This is this label that says hello label, right? Now, what does it look like on the page? Well, you're going to be tempted, and if you're someone who likes to use Expression Web, who ever used Expression Web? Right? No? Good. Don't use Expression Web. It's really old. 2008. It's very bad. But if you would use Expression Web, you're going to see something like this. On the design, there's different tabs down here. One of them is source. The other one is design. And you can see that there's a label here. You may be forgiven to think that this is Wysiwyg. What you see is what you get. It is not. Please don't think of that as that, right? If you think this is what you see is what you get on the real page, it is not. Don't do it. Don't use it. And I will discourage you from using, you can drag and drop controls in here, by the way, too. I don't recommend it. I'd rather you do it in source view. And the reason for that is because we have more control, and we're going to be using Bootstrap and stuff, and it won't show up here, and you'll be fooled to think that it's going to look one way when it's something totally different. Okay? But it's here, just in case you wanted to see it. You can also do split view if you really want to, which is even uglier, right? Use this. This view is a fine view, right? So I've got my ASP.NET hello label. Let's try it. I'm just going to click Control F5 for start without debugging, and it's going to bring up my hello label with that says text on it, right? That's what it should come up. There is my label, right? I got nothing, right? I want to change this. When I load my page, here's what I want to do. I want to figure this out with you. when I load my page, I want to change the text property. Hear me. I want to change the text property of my hello label to say hello world. Can you figure it out in the C# file, the code behind file, where to put that in? Go to your C# file and figure it out. So here's my C# file. Gee, where do I put that code to make sure that when my page loads, right, it sets the text value of my hello label to hello world. Some of you are just watching, so I'll start typing. Hello label. Look how it comes up, right? Yes. Dot text. Beautiful. I like it. Dot text is equal to hello dot world or comma the world. And there you go. Control save. So this says my page load event. Every time a page loads, it triggers a page load event. I don't mean to make the gun sign, right? But it does. It triggers a page load event, right? And the page load event, you can put stuff in there, some code in there to do something. We use this for initialization a lot of times. If we want to initialize variables, if we want to start something when the page loads, but we use the page load event, okay? So let's check this out. Let's see if it works now. I'm going to run this with debugging this time and see what happens, right? So clickety-click. It's going to run with debugging. And if everything goes well, it should say hello world. There it is. So how did I do that? Let's stop debugging for a second. And if we go down into here, you can see that my default form here has an ID of hello label. Remember, the capital I and capital D get picked up from the ASPX.cs file on the back end. That's how it can come up here. It's part of the namespace for COMP2007, 2016 lesson 1B. It's part of it, right? And what happens is we can assign hello world as a string to the text property of the hello label, which is a control, just like we did Windows Forms when you did rapid application development with Andrew or whoever else. Questions so far? Lots of stuff. Yes? The C# file is the code behind file that controls the logic behind your page. That's what it is, right? And they're tied together, and they're tied together right here, right, where I say my code behind file is this file. You can change this to another code behind file if you want. Don't recommend, but you could. So you have one code behind file that gives logic to more than one page if you wanted it, right? Any other questions before we move on? I want to do a couple things more before we stop and take a break, right? So I want to make sure you guys are all clear on this stuff. Okay, so this is all golden and good, right? We've got our page happening. I've got my ASP.NET label, hello label, and so on. What about a button, right? We've got a label. I want a button. Let's make a button as well. I'm going to drag and drop the button right from here into my control. There it is. And I'm going to call this my submit button. Submit button, right? It's going to run at the server. The text is going to be submit, right? I want to create an event handler. There's two ways to create an event handler for a button. I could go to design view and double click the button. Look how what you see is not what you get, right? I can double click this button and it'll create an event handler just like it did for Windows Forms. Or what I like to do instead, with this highlighted on the right in properties, click the little lightning bolt, right? And under the lightning bolt, there's different events, standard events that come with the button. Double click the click event. What this does is it does two things. One, in the ASPX default form, right? It actually adds another attribute called onClick. This is the onClick attribute. It's an event. And what it does is it points to what the event is called in the code behind file. Notice on the code behind file, we've added a new protected event called submit but click. Right? It's automatic. When you can double click to get that, or you can click on the lightning bolt here. There's a lightning bolt. And if you double click on the click event, it'll generate that event for you. That's what this means. This auto event wire up true means, right? When I click on this, it creates my stub event right here. Okay. Okay, cool. So when I click the button, I want the label, my hello label, to say goodbye, right? So how do I do that? How do I change my hello label text to goodbye? See, I just said that, right? It's pretty simple. Hello label dot text is equal to goodbye. Okay. Right? And if I save this piece, and if I run this, I'm going to have a button, and I can change my hello world to goodbye, right? Remember that the hello world gets generated because of the page load event, and the goodbye, when I click on goodbye, it'll be generated from my button click. Each one creates something called a postback. It takes the information, goes back to the server, and does a round trip. It's done it twice now. Once when the page loaded, right? And once when I click the button. See what I'm doing with my hand? It means it's doing a round trip over and over again. Is that a good thing? No, because I'm accessing the server over and over again. I'm not using Ajax, like Angular, like React, like other front-end frameworks, right? I'm accessing the server back and forth like old PHP did, right? Because this is old technology. This is what it did. We can still use Ajax. We can still incorporate all the stuff we know. But in this case, the way we've kind of coded it up, you can't do it. Here's something else. There's something called state, and that we're going to talk about a lot. Is HTTP, is it stateless or is it stateful? Does it have state? Does it retain state? Or is it stateless? Yeah. Stateless, which means I make a request, I get a response, and I'm not connected to the server anymore. Not so here. Here I'm connected, which means if I do a refresh, try it, it's going to give me one of these. Confirm form resubmission, which will not allow me to refresh my page. This will not go back to hello world. That's done on purpose. You can change that. You can take away state, right? You can make it stateless again per control, right? Right now, if I look at the page source, you can see that here, my state is this. My view state is retained, right? And the reason for that is because of security. If we want to make a secure application, we don't want someone backtracking, and so we retain state. But we should be able to turn it off when we need to. And we can do that. We'll cover that later on. Okay? So just to note, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the background. If I was going to recap before we take a break. Lots of stuff going on in the background, right? When we're running our server, we retain state. We need this up here, this directive with these 4 attributes. You need to know this for your little quiz next week. I will ask you questions around it, okay? And also, you need to understand what run at means. Run at means it's going to be processed by the server. That's what it means, okay? If I say, what is the run at control? What does the run at attribute need? Do you need a run at attribute? You do need it, right? And ASP colon, these elements here with ASP colon label, right? You need to, when you put this in, you create a server control. That's what they're called, server controls. They need to have, the only attribute they need to have is the run at attribute. You have to have attribute, run at attribute with server. And I'm going to show you that like this. Let's suppose I don't have this. I take it away. It should error out. See? Now, it's not going to stop you from running it this way because HTML is very fluid. But if I hover over, it says validation ASP.NET element ASP colon label is missing required attribute run at. You cannot do an ASP.NET control without it. Okay? Just to note. So you need the run at attribute. That gets processed in the server, right? And we're doing Visual Studio 2013, 2015. That's required as well to run this stuff for web forms. Okay? Your default ASPX page has a code behind file called default ASPX.cs, CS standing for C#, right? That's what it is. And we've mentioned it here again, just reviewing. We're mentioning it here with the code behind file. This is what points to this file over here. Let's save all right, and let's take a short break. When we come back from our break, I want to go over with you the PowerPoint presentation that's connected to this thing. By the way, the PowerPoint presentation is up on Blackboard. We're going to go over it, and it's going to get us into the next piece. I want to help you do your Lab 1, like I always try and do in class, if you can. If you can't, it's due next week on Thursday. Go to break, 10, 15 minutes, come back, get your coffee. We'll see you back in a sec.